Welcome back to AV Veterans Talk. We're continuing our conversation with this week's guest, Jodi Champagne. So, Jodi, we're back, and your book here was your 3 books. Very special. And you wanted to tell your stories and your interviews in a very different format to where people, instead of, we sit down, we open a book, we start reading it. And, wow, it's amazing because I just happened to grab the page where Eugene Lajeunesse is your subject matter there. A story like this is great when you read it, but to be there like you and hear it firsthand was very important for you to share with the public.
Yes.
You went to a different type of technology. Why don't you explain first off the technology, and then we'll talk a little bit about Eugene.
Oh, you got it. Well, there was not a long story, but there was a situation that came across from a friend of mine that had showed me something that he had done with his book, and him and his buddy were testing it out.
Yeah.
And when they showed that to me, instantly I'm like, oh my God, I need this, because that will bring the stories of my veterans to life.
Absolutely.
And have more of an emotional
impact
on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, there goes to that, emotional impact.
Mm-hmm.
And so I contacted the gentleman. His name is Jim Daly,
Mm-hmm.
and which you've met.
Mm-hmm.
And he had designed this program for me. It's called Augmented Reality.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is it's similar to, a lot of people know it similar to like the QR code, but this is like much more advanced than the QR code. It's not just a scan.
Right.
It has so much to it. But what happens is there's a specific app that was designed for this book
Mm-hmm.
that allows you to take that app, just slightly touch, not even touch, just slightly go where it kind of sees the image, and it instantly brings up a video
Mm-hmm.
of this person.
Right.
And not any other person, this specific person.
Right.
So that at that point, you not only can read a little bit about them, but you're actually going to see that person
Mm-hmm.
talk and tell you
His
themselves,
story.
their
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah. So like any of these guys, you would just take and you would scan it over, and immediately becomes a live person telling a story.
Exactly.
And like you said, unfiltered, raw, and one-on-one telling you that. So, and it's through all 3 books. It's the
That's
same
correct.
thing, So, and you get just tons and tons of information on these guys. So, the importance of somebody like Eugene Lajeunesse, his interview. Why is let's just take him for an example. His
Well-
story. How is it?
How is his story?
Yeah.
I interviewed him towards the beginning, and after that interview, it was so impactful for me.
Mm-hmm.
It almost like confirmed what I was doing
Mhm.
was the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to his house, now keep in mind, I've never met him before.
Mm-hmm.
I was referred to him by a friend. He was the grandfather and that. So I went over to his home, and when I arrived, as you see, he was fully dressed in his Navy uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, he was very hot because it's the thick wool.
Yeah.
But because the older ones are, the wool.
Yeah.
And so he was fully ready. And so I'm setting up, not knowing that in the room behind me, he lived in a trailer.
Yeah.
In the room directly behind me where I'm interviewing him, his wife was dying.
Oh boy.
And it was very hard.
Oh yeah.
And I kept saying, I can do this another time. He should be spending time with her, not with me.
Right.
And his daughter had told me that this was so important to him, and the fact that he needed to take a little break that he wanted to tell his story because he was one of the ones that was lost. He never spoke about his time in war, and he suffered many, many, many years until he finally sought help, only a matter of years ago. And so one of the things that he was asked to do was to either talk about it or write about it. And so he wrote about it, and then after he wrote about it, he was told to give it to everybody in his family, his best friend, everybody, his kids, grandkids, whatever. So they sent me that piece of what he wrote. And I'm reading, and I'm in tears reading this, and the very last statement of that journal, and it was like 4 pages long, was, "This is not the worst part." And I couldn't believe it, that this was not the worst part. And so by his family reading that, it kind of opened up an understanding.
Yeah.
And now he started to talk about it. And that's why it was so important for us to do this interview. But what was really hard is people did not understand. He's sitting here pouring his heart out. That's extremely emotional because he's angry. I call him my New Yorker because he has that anger and stuff. But his wife is dying behind me, and I can hear her cry out. And it just was breaking my heart. So when I went to edit his video, that's all I heard. And I heard this, because his daughter was in the room with her, closed door, as we're interviewing. I didn't hear it, but my microphone picked it up. And she says, "I love you, Mom." And she says, "I love you too, honey." And so as I'm editing, I'm listening to this, and I'm like, oh, this is way too personal. This is way, way too personal. I can't do this. I got to let them know, because I don't want people to know they're personal.
Yeah.
But yet it's so strong because this is how powerful it was for him. But they told me no. They said, "You keep it in."
Yeah.
Because they need to know what he's going through now. And this is why it's so important for him to tell his story. He wants this and future generations to understand that war isn't pretty.
Yeah.
And this is and he took his time out, of his wife dying to tell his story.
Yeah.
And a couple days later she had passed.
Wow.
But it was after all that and after hearing that, I knew what I was doing was right.
Yeah.
And it was so important on this. He is a Pearl Harbor survivor.
Yeah.
He's also a survivor of the USS Helena that was sunk.
Yeah.
He was there during the Battle of Guadalcanal. He was there when the Sullivan brothers were killed.
Yeah.
He watched them. The torpedo went under his ship and hit their ship.
Wow.
And so he was there. He was, with MacArthur and all that. And it was absolutely amazing, his story.
Yeah. So anyway, wow, that's powerful stuff. When we come back, we'll get into a little bit more of it, and your other chapters on Korea and Vietnam. And wow, so what a mission you're on. And
yes.
we're all thankful for that you took on this responsibility, because I know emotionally for you. We'll talk a little bit about that too and stuff. So, and when we come back, so let's take a break here. Okay, thank you. I'm Bob Alvis, and thanks for joining us for this segment of AV Veterans Talk.